Hey everyone. Okay, so I just put down my thoughts on John Lennon. I wasn't going to do that today, but then I just realized that it was December 8th and he got murdered 45 years ago. So I thought that was only appropriate. But the one I was going to do today was also tied to a book I referenced in that last video about John Lennon, The History of Rock and Roll, Part Two, which picks up at the Beatles. Part One obviously leaves off right before the Beatles began. They're both great books by a guy named Ed Ward, and I'll put a link to the volume two on Audible on Amazon, and you can find it and pretty easy to find volume one from there. So I'll put that in the descriptions on this video. And for now, I wanted to kind of get into. So I read a lot of books on rock and roll, the aforementioned books included, but also a lot of biographies on musicians, bands, etc. You know, the Eagles, Bob Dylan, Donald Fagen, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, lots and lots of biographies. And what you find, Elvis Presley, and what you find is that they all have certain traits in common. So yes, a life of being a rock star sounds fantastic. It sounds seductive. It sounds like something that everybody would want to do. But you read enough of these things and you start to see the common traits. And it, not to say that you shouldn't be a rock star. I mean, if you have a lot of talent, you should absolutely. I would love to hear your music if you're really good and just starting out. But just know this is more or less what you're going to come across in your lifetime if you live a life of rock and roll. So here are the common traits that I've found across pretty much all rock stars. Notable exceptions, of course, but for the most part, this is what you're headed for. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. So things all rock stars have in common. Again, thanks to Gemini for generating this image of a rock star who's lived a life of rock and roll. You can see we got the pills here. We got he's looking a little angry. All right, so here we go. First one, you will definitely 100% have multiple marriages, multiple relationships. Precious and few are rock stars who get married once. Three, four, five marriages or relationships are far more common. So if you were thinking you wanted a stable life with one spouse and children or something like that, probably not going to happen for you. That is something that everybody came across. Number two, multiple labels. This is just a given. You're going to start off with one label and you're going to get disgruntled with them, or they're going to do something wrong, or you can your fortunes are going to be better with another label, so you will switch labels. I believe the most notable exception on this is Bob Dylan, who started out with Columbia, and I believe he's still with Columbia, but don't quote me on that one. Also, the record label business is very fluid. Those things start up and go out of business all the time. So highly likely that you'll start one place and it'll get bought or sold or fold or something else. You know, it's a wild and woolly beast, record labels, and they'll start a label for a specific genre, and then that genre won't do well, so they'll shut it down, and it's a wild and woolly beast. So you will definitely have multiple labels. You will also have lawsuits over money and or rights to songs. This 100% baked in. You will be involved in a lawsuit over money and or rights to your songs at some point in your life. It's a given. It's going to happen. Highly likely you will deal with drug and or alcohol related issues. That's pretty much part and parcel of being a rock star. Notable exceptions there, of course, but by and large, it's such a huge part of the landscape. It comes with the territory and really hard to get away from it. And you can see this guy's got it going on here. He's got drugs and alcohol. Yeah, he looks like it. All right. What's next? Criminal charges, highly common, highly common. And, you know, even a guy like Frank Sinatra has been charged with some kind of criminal activity. And it was fairly benign, relatively speaking, but you're probably going to have a mugshot. It won't be Jim Morrison. You know, you might not get arrested for exposing yourself on stage, but at some point you'll be arrested for something. Highly likely. This one definitely damaged relationships. Here, I'm talking more about like friends, people you're in bands with, also managers, also people at the aforementioned record labels. You're just gonna things just fall apart. They go bad, and part of that is just um, familiarity breeds contempt. Part of that is just things change, but relationships will definitely crumble for you. And also, somebody's going to die. It might not be you, you might, but the 27 Club is well documented with Jimmy and Janis and Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain later, Amy Winehouse later. So if it's not you that dies young, probably somebody is going to die, which sucks for sure, because it's gonna hurt. They all pretty much hate and or love touring. It's just a part of the rock and roll lifestyle. A lot of the ones that have been doing it a long time hate it. Van Morrison clearly hates playing concerts. He shouldn't be doing it. He's terrible in concert, and I love Van Morrison so much. But I had tickets to see him at the Royal Albert Hall in London the year I was doing a semester abroad, and he sang Moondance in about 45 seconds and was pissed off about it the entire time. There's lots of footage of him kind of yelling at the crowd, just don't do it. The flip side of that are guys like Tom Petty, Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen. Guys know, yes, I've been playing this song for 45 years, and this is the 10,000th time I played it, but there's probably people in the audience who have never seen me play this before, and I want to give them a good show, and they work really hard at it, and they have that lunch pail attitude, and they're just fantastic. So kudos to you, the late Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, those guys, fantastic. And then you have guys like Willie Nelson, who tours constantly. Bob Dylan tours constantly. And then you have, the guys like the Moody Blues and um, Blue Oyster Cult. So we lived in Mableton, this little town in Mableton when we lived in Georgia. And there was an amphitheater near us, and we would get all these acts from the early 70s, and it's just a strange life of, I just think of the guy writing Don't Fear the Reaper, in the early 70s, and now he goes out and that's all anybody wants to hear so that they can yell more cowbell at him. And it's just a strange life, especially for one hit wonders, but really for any band that's been around for a long time. But yeah, that's what they do. That's your life. If you are a member of King Crimson, you're going to be playing small places 30 years. It's a strange life. But that's part of it for sure. Almost all individual solo artists and bands peak early creatively. Like all the good stuff comes up front. There's more on that later. I actually charted this, or at least started to chart it, where the y-axis is quality and the x-axis is time, and it's a big head and a long tail, if you're familiar with that. If you're familiar with that expression. But in almost all cases, the good stuff comes early, and then you're slogging through it. And it could just be that you never hit that standard. You can never duplicate that cherry high. Bruce Springsteen, as talented as he is never going to do another Welcome to Asbury Park. It's just not going to happen. So all the good stuff comes early. More on that later. And then one thing they have in common, the ones that are in the Hall of Fame, long careers, but on average, less than one hit per year. So the formula really is a lot of hits per album up front, and then that kind of dwindles down over the first 3-4 albums, and then you get to album 20 and you're lucky if there's anything on there that's any good, and you go to play these concerts like I mentioned, and the last thing a concert goer wants to hear is here's something from our latest album. Everybody's like, oh man, I went and saw Rush. I was actually my last concert. I went and saw Rush. I told my brother after I saw Beck in concert in Atlanta, I think it was at the Tabernacle, but I retired. I told my brother, I'm like, I'm out. I was like, and the only way I'm coming out of retirement is if Rush starts touring, which they never had. They never had. So like years later, he's like, hey man, he calls me. He's like, hey man, Rush is on tour. I got you a ticket. You owe me $100. I was like, so we go see it in the freaking Verizon Amphitheater in Alpharetta, Georgia, a place with no soul, and saw Rush, and they were great. They were great. But obviously, everybody wants to hear Tom Sawyer and Red Barchetta and Spirit of the Radio and everything. So when Geddy Lee's like, "Yeah, here's something off of our last album," everybody's like, "All right," and it was awful. It was bad. But what are you gonna do? Uh, but that's the formula. Stick around for 30 years, have a bunch of good songs. After 30 years, you'll have a greatest hits of maybe 20, 25 songs that will be good enough to get you into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You've seen it play out time and time again. Every band you can think of has more or less followed that formula. Um, you do get occasionally a band that'll have a brief but spectacular career, like the Beatles, like the Eagles, like Steely Dan. Um, and those are the exception, but the norm is you're around a long time. The good stuff comes early, less than one hit per year, but you're around for so long that that's good enough to get in the Hall of Fame. So those are my thoughts on that, and would love to hear what you have to say in the comments if you're so inclined. And I'll put that link to History of Rock and Roll, is I think what it's called, part two, in the description. And I hope you enjoy it. Y'all take care. See ya.